This is Alamo Anthem, where we, the overtaxed, remember our liberty. Direct from the forgotten countryside outside of Alamo City, San Antonio.
Okay, ready, set, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action.
We're back!
It's been a while.
I think I redlined there. Hang on. My levels are bad.
It's been a long time.
Should we say anything about our hiatus or just forget about it? I don't like people apologizing on podcasts. It's like, it's boring.
No.
Just move on with the show.
It's been a while. We haven't been back since the election. So lots of things to talk about.
There was
right?
nothing going on. We didn't have anything to talk about over the last.
That's right. Nothing to talk.
8
That's
months
why
or
we
whatever.
weren't on the air, because there was nothing to talk about, right?
That's right.
It was so boring.
Has anything even happened?
What's happened? It's January 3rd, 2025.
We had this fun family text thread around the election, and we could see that it looked like Trump was going to win. And it went on, like rapid fire for a few days. And then one of my brothers, who'd been silent the whole time, was suddenly, he jumped in. He's like, whoa, what's this? My girl Kamala is losing? He had no idea.
He's been out of the loop.
It's a funny, he knew.
He knew he was just being funny because of the silence.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some weird volume changes for anybody listening. Just bear with the recording.
Oh, okay.
I'm not even going to delete anything out.
So we're...
No edit 2025.
No edit?
No, just kidding.
Okay. We don't have time for that.
That's
Ain't
right.
nobody got time for that.
That's right. No editing. What you hear is the first time we did it.
Unedited
No retakes.
version
Live.
of our...
No burps. No throat clears.
17 days. We are going to have a new administration. What are you guys' thoughts? You think he's going to make it?
Okay, what's the deal with January 6th and then the 20th? 20th is inauguration. What is the 6th? That's when the electors go and do their thing?
Uh-huh.
Is it always on the 6th?
I think so. I can't say for sure. I'm not an expert, but I think it is. That's
Gotcha.
it. Let me
Okay.
look it up.
In the meantime, I want to say, and this will probably trigger some people, but it's okay. I am really, it frequently crosses my mind how excited I am for all of the political prisoners, the J6ers, and in hopes that, they obviously get pardoned. Like, they don't even need to be pardoned, right? But they should be let out.
Yeah.
And I hope that happens for them in a very short period of time.
For those of you that don't know, they have there have been releases of the Inspector General's research and investigation on January 6th found a lot of discrepancies in the stories that we were told and the actual truth. And it come to find out there were FBI agents on the scene, not agents, but operatives, informants that were intermixed, which is exactly what many of the conservatives have been claiming all this time, that they kind of were provoking the MAGA people to enter the Capitol. So it wasn't as cut and dry as the media told us. It wasn't the attack that they claimed it was. And many people were arrested without having done anything. They weren't creating any harm. They just simply went to the Trump rally and then walked to the Capitol building, went inside because they saw everybody else going inside. And then they thought everything was fine, went home to their families. Then the FBI comes months later, knocking on the door and arresting them. So a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that we all agree that anybody that was breaking windows or whatever, they should be charged with property crime.
Absolutely.
But people that were let in by police, and maybe you could even make the argument the police let people in because they didn't want to escalate the situation or whatever, and anybody that could be hurt was already out of the building. But for whatever case, there's a lot of people that showed up and they didn't see any of the destruction or whatever, or it was on a different side of the building, and then they just walked in because everything was open. And then I believe there were also some people that were arrested or at least visited by the FBI that never went in, that they went to the grounds, but they actually never went in, and they still kind of got the business.
So what do you call it, or not what do you call it? What is the typical punishment for vandalism? Because I don't see why it should be, I'm just thinking about this for the first time as you were saying that, Joe, but like that they should be charged with the crime essentially of vandalism, right? People who are breaking stuff. And why should it be any higher than that?
Well, I think that what they'd be charged with, which I think is a pretty hefty punishment, is destruction of federal property.
Right. But that's what I'm asking. Why should destruction of federal property be worse than destruction of private property?
I don't think it should.
Right.
But I suppose that the reasoning would be that it's like a crime against everybody, because everybody supposedly, it belongs supposedly to everybody unless you want to go there.
Are you saying
Uninvited.
it's the people's house, Joe?
It's just not those people's house.
It's not the deplorables' house?
It's not. They just saw a big basket of deplorables walking up. They could not have it. Wouldn't just let anybody into your house. You gotta have some
Jeez.
rules.
Just FYI, January 6th is the day that the Congress counts the electoral votes. So
I see.
that's how it
Yeah.
goes
Okay.
every year. I mean,
Every 4 years.
even this, or every election cycle is what I meant.
Yeah.
So this year it's January 6th, 2025, and the inauguration is January 20th, 2025 at noon.
So then they have 2 weeks to wrap it up and get out.
Yeah.
All right.
To get out. Get out. So yeah, that's what's happening coming
To
up.
shred the papers.
So that means this week, which is Monday, is the day that the Congress counts the electoral votes. So
Mm-hmm. Nice.
we'll see if this happens on the left this time. Wouldn't that be interesting?
I am flying on that day, and I'm suddenly slightly worried that something crazy is going to happen or whatever.
Well, your worries are somewhat justified with all the weird stuff
I'm even
going on. Right?
flying to Washington.
DC?
No, the other one.
Oh, so what's going on in Washington?
But I could tell people I was flying to Washington on J6.
And they'll go, DC?
You're a J6er.
You're a J6er. You guys, have you been keeping up with this New Orleans,
The truck.
the truck, and then the Las Vegas Trump Tower explosion?
I just listened to a podcast about it today. Just that there's a lot of suspicious stuff about it.
Yeah. I'm not sure I'm buying any of it, but
I
Yeah.
haven't listened to anything at all about it. All I've done is read a few headlines.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, can you be convinced that it wasn't the CIA?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's dangerous for people like us to fall into the trap of just like, that it's the same answer for everything. You know,
Sure.
sometimes terrorism is just terrorism,
Yeah.
but you could just say that, well, but why? Terrorism's always for a reason. So it's like, you could always point to like, what are they trying to do with the terrorism,
But in a big picture way of looking at it, though, because Michelle and I were just talking about this the other day, I think the big picture answer is always the same.
Yeah.
In the sense
back.
that the chaos is great for the state. The state loves
Right.
chaos.
Right.
Now, what the medium term, like the actual details of the plan are, is what we don't know.
Right. Well, and it's I heard, I think it was like the Attorney General of New Orleans, Louisiana or whatever.
Mhm.
But someone was at a press conference and talking about basically, well, this just shows that we need to up our game with like the surveillance state, basically.
Oh, here we go.
And he was like listing like all the things in Europe that they have like proactive facial scanners and all this stuff, and that
So
he's
terrible.
specifically going to push for like all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your point, it's kind of like if you were a murder investigator, right, and somebody was murdered, and then the wife inherited a bunch of money or got like a huge insurance payment or was able then to do something that she had already wanted to do. It's like you have to investigate her.
Mm-hmm.
You have to interrogate that situation because that person has so much to gain from it, and they did gain from it. And I think it's the same way with the government, where it's like, well, cui bono, like what, like all the usual suspects, like as soon as something happens, it's like, we'll use it for these ends, you know? And so even if it turns out that, everything is just normal run-of-the-mill terrorism and it didn't have anything that it wasn't state sponsored by our state or anybody that we allowed to do anything, you still have to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, it's like, it reminds me of Rahm Emanuel. I don't know if you guys remember who
Never
he
let
is.
a crisis go to waste.
Never let a crisis go to waste. And what he said, what I mean by that is, when there's a crisis, governments have an opportunity that they don't normally have. He kind of just said it out loud. He probably shouldn't have said it.
In case there was any confusion about what I meant.
And then when he said that, I started thinking about all the crises that we've experienced in the U.S. since my adult life, and it makes me question all of it because I'm like, what happened after? What did they gain as a result?
Well, when you know the things that they have done, I mean, even just knowing 2 or 3 crazy, psychopathic things that they've done, it's not hard then to believe that they could manufacture stuff. They could take mentally unstable people and talk them into doing insane things. Like, it's just not. Why wouldn't they? I mean, they purposely make people sick and then watch how they die, and
I think
both
like
with the Tuskegee experiment and other crazy things like that. Or what was the one off the coast of?
I have to go get my conspiracy book.
Right.
It doesn't help that they seal documents too. Makes it look worse.
Right.
So we have these JFK sealed
9/11 sealed
9/11,
documents.
and so it's like and then they criticize you for being a conspiracy theorist. It's like, well, why don't you just let us see what's in the documents and let us see what the facts, and we will know for ourselves if it's true or not.
Well, it's like if there were okay, so recently there was a fire, like some building burned down in Hondo just the other day or a couple nights ago.
I'm gonna move this down so.
And which I have video of it. It's pretty interesting.
So what was it that burned down?
It's like some big warehouse thing.
Here, I have the Hondo Police Department statement here. Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
It says the Criminal Investigations Division of the Hondo Police Department immediately launched an investigation. Detectives worked through the night and into the early morning hours. During the investigation, they recovered critical dash camera footage from a civilian who witnessed individuals fleeing the area. Detectives also determined that the fire was caused by the use of a firework in a manner inconsistent with the manufacturer's recommended guidelines. This is all just anti-fireworks propaganda.
You mean that the manufacturer didn't say to shoot it at a building?
After the video was posted to the department's Facebook page, the community responded with numerous tips submitted through the Medina County Crime Stoppers P3 app. These tips were instrumental in identifying 3 juvenile suspects involved in this incident. Due to their age, the suspects' names will not be released. Criminal charges of arson and criminal mischief will be referred to the Medina County Juvenile Probation Department for prosecution. Yeah.
So let's say we didn't know any of that. Or let's say they said something like, well, any reports that you hear from civilians saying that they saw young people running from the scene is no indication of criminal behavior by such and such group, and we have no reason to believe that it was politically motivated. Then it's like you're left to be like, why did they say those things? And that's like, why aren't they saying that they're investigating it? And why, you know what I mean? Like, so it's not just what they don't tell you, it's what they tell you also. In the case of, I don't want to jump ahead, but like with the first Trump assassination attempt, it's like the lack of information that they gave is just like, well, if you give us nothing, then the only thing you have are theories. So if I didn't know anything and I saw some people running away, or somebody told me like, oh, somebody saw like some youths running away from this burning building, it's like, do I just walk around like an automaton and like, this is the information I have? Or
like
do
they
I
get
say,
mad at you for thinking.
Right. And so it's like, well, maybe they were playing with fireworks in a place that they thought they can get away with it, and it accidentally caught a thing. Maybe they decided that they wanted to burn it down. Maybe they were innocent bystanders and they were just too close, and maybe they're homeless or whatever. So these are all just theories. You know what I mean? And the only conspiracy part of it is that combined with the government is not telling you what the actual answer is. So there's a conspiracy to keep the information from you, and then your theory about what's going on.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, well, then give us the information and we won't have any more theories.
It's like your theory is that they have sealed documents. You
Right.
conspiracy theorist deplorable.
Right, exactly.
And then they'll tell us, like,
that they have a reason
so
to.
why, the question is, if you were the state and I asked this question, what would your answer be? Why are they sealed? What would be the response?
Because that's sensitive information.
Because it could put patriots in danger. That's what they always say. And they can never prove
So
it.
it's always about the security or of the.
Always.
Yeah, it's always
Yeah.
about security. Huh.
Well, because in that information you have techniques that are employed by the CIA and are currently employed by them, that if our enemies knew our information gathering techniques, then it would put our ability to do that at risk. That's it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I just, I'm not sure what's going on. I don't think it has to do with terrorism, though. That's my initial knee-jerk
Well,
reaction.
There's
But
some weird things about it.
yeah, there's suspicious things. For those that don't know, the Sugar Bowl was going on in New Orleans, which brought a lot of tourists. I mean, there's a lot of tourists there anyway, usually. And they were on Bourbon Street walking, people like they usually do in New Orleans. In fact, he and I were just there in the summer, so it was weird. I mean, we
Yeah.
went to that exact Walgreens, and it was kind of
Normally, they have these hydraulic barricades that go up.
oh yeah, and they
Um,
were taken down that day.
They were apparently
saw
being
that.
like replaced or something like that.
That's weird.
Very inopportune time.
Uh-huh.
There's other weird things about it, like that he shot himself with a gun that would make you unrecognizable. It's like, oh, that's convenient. And then the bomb went off. So I was like, was it timed? And then,
And why shoot yourself if you know you're gonna?
yeah.
You're talking about. Wait a minute, you were getting it mixed up. You're talking about the
Oh, maybe I'm talking about
Tesla thing. The
yeah,
Tesla
the
that was
Tesla.
blown up in front of the Trump Tower.
Tesla.
Who shot himself
Sorry, the
with
other
the
guy.
Tesla thing?
It was another terrorist supposedly attack in
In front
Las
of
Vegas.
Trump Tower.
In front of Trump Tower in a Tesla.
Yeah,
And
it was
the
an
Cybertruck.
explosion.
yeah,
But who in that explosion shot themselves?
It's the guy that was
the guy that
that rented the
that
truck.
was driving it.
Yeah.
The driver?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he just burned up.
Well, you would think if he knew he
both.
was going to burn up, that he would just kill himself or the
So
explosion.
he shot himself and then it exploded? So that's how it exploded?
I don't know. I don't know all the
Well,
details.
so here's some weird other details
What
about
an
it.
evil knucklehead,
Some-
am I right?
Some
All right.
That's what Elon called him.
some recent like changed his resume within the last I don't remember, it was like 6 months or a year, whatever, had to do with like autonomous vehicles, you know? And it's like Teslas can be driven autonomously. So that's weird. It's like and it's this question, it could even possibly be that he was already dead, you know? The other weird thing about it that people
Yeah, why would you drive it?
So according to statements from people who knew him well, he was like a demolitions expert. And so they were saying both of these guys were military guys, and apparently
They were special forces from the same base. They had served
Fort
at
Bragg.
they had both served at Fort
Yeah.
Bragg at the same time, but
Yeah.
I don't know if they knew each other. They haven't made that connection
right.
yet.
I guess they
Because
just
Fort Bragg's a big military base. It's huge.
yeah. Apparently they do MK Ultra there. Anyway,
Just a side note.
yeah. Just no, I don't know anything about that.
That's real.
But what's weird is that the people that knew him that like served with him and stuff is like if he wanted to do that, like he would blow up half of the tower. He has the expertise and the ability to get stuff. Instead, it was like propane and other accelerants and like fireworks. So it's like it just even the investigator or somebody who was given a statement, an official statement, pointed out that it was strange that somebody with his training would use such rudimentary methods, and
Yeah.
that it didn't, and it was more like explosions that happened within the car that like was at no risk of hurting anybody because it's just so rudimentary. It's just like I'm gonna throw a bunch of stuff in my car, drive it into a building or near a building, and then set it off, and then it's gonna be like the movies or something.
I thought it didn't hurt anything because it was a Cybertruck. That's what Elon said.
Of
Right,
course,
sure.
that's what he said.
Well, and so they're sending people out to try to get camera footage from the vehicle.
And apparently, he was a huge Trump supporter.
Right.
So that doesn't make sense either.
Right.
Like, why did he go in front of the Trump Tower and
Yeah.
Weird.
Both vehicles were rented through this online app, same app. Kind of interesting.
Could be. Could be.
Could be just a coincidence. But there's
It's
some
been a while since I rented a
commonalities.
car, so.
Yeah, I haven't rented a car in a while.
You know, I've wanted to rent a Tesla.
A Tesla truck or just a regular
Just whatever,
Tesla?
any of them.
Those Tesla trucks
Wouldn't that
are
be fun for
so-
a day?
No offense, Elon, if you're listening. Those trucks
I'm sure
are
he has time.
ugly. I think they're like something out of Minecraft or something.
Right. Yeah.
Don't they look like that?
Plays too much Minecraft.
Yeah.
Yeah, some weird stuff. There's other things that everybody's kind of scratching their head about. That guy, the Las Vegas guy, he just came back from like Germany or something like that.
Oh,
Which,
I didn't know that
Which
part.
also there was like a similar attack had just happened.
Yeah,
in
the Germany
Yeah.
thing.
Um,
That was a Saudi Arabian doctor
right.
in Germany.
Which there's also some weird things about that story as well.
Mhm.
But he came back and it's like he has a new baby and wife, like in it's like Colorado or something like that. And then it's like your first weekend home, you're gonna go to Las Vegas. It's just everything about it is just strange. You know,
Mhm.
it's very very strange.
But how do you guys feel about this new incoming administration?
Well, so this is a point that was brought up on the podcast that I listened to. Shout out Liberty Lockdown, Clint Russell, and just that. What better way to try and hamstring the people from the new administration that want to gut stuff than to heighten the fear of everybody about terrorist attacks? It's like, well, we can't cut budget now. We just have these attacks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's kind of this thing where my feeling at least is if you're going to say, we're going to cut the government, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, you know, it's JFK said that he wanted to scatter. I forgot how he said it, but like basically he wanted to disband the CIA, that it would not exist anymore at all ever. And lo and behold, he was taken out afterwards. So I think when they come in and they're like, we're going to cut public employees by 50%, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, you know, these people will do anything. So it's kind of the situation is like, well, what's going to happen? What next big crazy thing's going to happen? There was 2 assassination attempts on Trump, you know, because he was winning the election.
Yeah. Well, those of us who think that there's a deep state and they have benefited in the last 50 years from this current system that we live there, our tax system, our medical system and healthcare system, our you name it, all the systems, there's been one group that has benefited. Meanwhile, the rest of us are struggling. They're not going to go away quietly. They're
Right.
going to try to stop him at every turn because that's their. Why would you ever want to end the wonderful benefits that you've been getting over the last 50 years?
Yeah. If there's one group of people living off the backs of another group of people, and then it looks like, and everyone's just been taking it for a really long time, and now it looks like something might happen, there's no way they're not going to recoil and fight back
Yeah,
really hard.
they're not going away quietly. I was going to read you some analysis of why Trump won by Victor Davis Hanson. Do you guys know who that is?
Yeah.
I really
At
like him.
Hillsdale. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, he tweeted this out on, this was actually May 13th, 2024. It says, has America finally had it with Joe Biden? It says, Joe Biden's personal approval rating is at historic lows. Almost all his policies do not pull 50%. He is behind Trump in almost all the swing states, and now he lies serially even to sympathetic interviewers. In short, finally Biden has been exposed for what he always was and represented. Senator and Vice President Joe Biden was always sort of a buffoon. He is by nature a grandstander who handsomely profited from his office while posing as good old Joe from Scranton. He is a blowhard meddler who was one who proverbially has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Robert Gates. From dissenting on the bin Laden raid to his trisection of Iraq scheme. He's a fabulous who believes that the more animated he misleads and slurs, and he puts in parentheses, quote, semi-fascist, quote, fat, quote, lying dog, faced pony soldier, It goes on and on. The dregs of society, etc. The more likely he is to get away with it. He is a confessed plagiarist, and he has also invented much of his biography, from the would-be star college scholarship athlete and brilliant law student to semi-truck driver and jailed civil rights activist. His uncle, we are instructed, was eaten by cannibals. Joe assures us that he was the first in his family to go to college. And he is a racist with repertory of racial taunts and smears unrivaled among modern politicianists. Quote, junkie, quote, boy, quote, you ain't black. And there's more. There's so many. African American is articulate and bright and clean and nice looking guy. Do you remember when he said that about
Storybook.
Obama? Jeez. Put y'all back in chains. Remember when he said that?
Yeah.
Um,
What did he say about the
Why did he say that? I can't remember the context.
the put y'all back in, James?
Yeah.
Just talking about
just fear mongering among
That's
Trump.
what he was saying Trump is going to do?
Yes.
Oh, crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot.
But what was the one where he said like the social jungle or something like that? It was like when it was during school integration, and then he said that throwing him into like
Racial jungle memes.
yeah.
The strange brag about Delaware as a slave state. You don't know my state. My state was a slave state. My state is a border state. And then Biden has
Sure,
always
it made sense in his head.
Yeah, Biden has always had a mean streak. That explains why for years he lied about the tragic fatal auto accident of his first wife and child, using it to libel the truck driver who was neither drunk nor culpable, but smeared publicly for years by Biden as intoxicated and guilty. For years, he ignored the pleas of the trucker's family to please stop libeling an innocent driver. Biden just told his greatest whopper that inflation was at 9%, actually 1.4% when he took office, and yet soon spiked to 9% due to his reckless deficit spending and money printing spree. But recently, Biden has reached a nadir, and even the left is resigned to him as a mere construct. After bragging after October 7th that his support for Israel was rock solid. Uh-oh. Israel's coming up. Joe's face.
No, I'm fine.
He is now cutting off military aid as it attempts, finally, to end the Hamas murderous threat, a reversion of old Joe Biden, who in his long past has previously threatened to cut off Israel while boasting later that anyone who did so was reprehensible. Leveraging congressional mandated aid for political advantage is precisely the allegation of politicking that Democrats demagogue to impeach Trump, to the then cheers of Biden himself. But his sellout of Israel is but a small tessera in his election pandering mosaic. He will again begin drawing down the strategic petroleum reserve to lower gas prices during his campaign, I noticed that.
Yeah.
He's badgered Ukraine not to hit Russian oil facilities. He has illegally forgiven billions in student debt aid to regain the elite youth vote. And as the campaign season begins, so too Biden suddenly poses as a border enforcer after letting nearly 10 million illegal aliens in. Biden has always put the agendas of his own and his family above the national interests. We witnessed that when he bragged that he fired the Ukrainian prosecutor looking into his son's Burisma skullduggery. The Biden consortium is corrupt and was enriched with over $25 million through foreign interests. Assurance that Senator and Vice President Joe Biden would deliver their quid pro quo investments in him. Isn't that funny? That's exactly what they accused Trump of doing, the quid pro quo thing.
Yeah, with Ukraine too.
Anyway, it goes on and on. I mean, this thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
It's interesting because that was written while he was still running.
Yeah,
apparently.
that was in May.
Before he it was like a Sunday. It was released through a tweet on official White House stationery that this is right after Friday with him saying, I have no plans of leaving the race. God himself would have to tell me to whatever. And then so that was all kind of interesting. But I think that after he was forced out of the race by big donors and Obama, and after his terrible debate performance, where everybody could see that they were lying about how sharp as a tack he was for so long, that there is a tendency to be like, oh, he's kind of just a doddering old fool, you
Yeah.
you have some pity and sympathy for him because he's clearly doesn't have all his faculties, and we probably all know people who are like that, loved ones that, they're not as sharp as they used to be. And maybe some people that are, pretty rough with dementia or whatever. But then it is good. I don't know if good is the right word to use here, but it's important to think back of Biden's just lifelong record of just being a bad person.
Yeah.
He is a bad person, and no amount of like end of the life kind of just pitiful state will change the fact that when he did have all of his faculties, he used them to do bad things.
Yep. I know. I mean, people have said that about Trump, but I mean, when you see like how he's used his family for political gain and stuff like that, and I don't know. I'm not impressed with him. Not just because he's a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I don't believe in socialism, socialist ideas, which Democrats do, and so I'll never agree. But I can say like Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was a lousy president, but he was a good man. Like he was a good husband. He was a good Christian. Emily has something to say about that. You're not a big fan, huh?
I don't have anything to say because I can't coherently defend my opinion. I have an ignorant opinion that he is awful.
Oh, okay.
I think,
but I'll find the evidence if I put in the time.
Yeah, he
was a Georgia farmer, a peanut farmer.
Yeah, and after he was president, I think he did like a lot. Like he built houses around the world and stuff like that. Like I think he did try to do a lot of good stuff.
He meant well.
He meant
That's
well.
what I'm saying. Is I think that he
I
really
think he
did.
seems self-righteous to me.
Yeah.
Like he was trying to wear his righteousness on his sleeve.
Yeah.
And I guess that really bugs me.
Well, there's a the Latter-day Saint religion. There's a group of people. The Baptists will go and protest. They have this conference every 6 months, and they'll go and they'll protest there. And they can be very aggressive with the Mormons there in Utah. But Jimmy Carter told, he's a Baptist, and he came to their defense, the Mormons' defense, and said, let them be, let them be. They're just trying to practice their religion in peace, and they're good people, let them be. So I'll always respect him for standing up for, marginalized people and his Christian ideas. But I don't think he was a great president.
So
because he's a Democrat and he believes in socialist ideas like the Department of Education. He started that, and I think that was a disaster.
So, well, I was about to ask the question, why do you think the state allowed him to become president? But I think maybe you just answered it.
Yeah.
Because he's a fool.
Yeah, I
and
think
then
so.
A fool who would use the government and be easily manipulated into thinking it would do good things.
Yep.
To grow it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that up until COVID, most people, I mean, I haven't taken a poll, but I think that the general sense is, the government is well-meaning, and if I want to help, I'll put effort towards the things that they have said will help, right? So if I want to help kids and education, like, well, why wouldn't I donate extra money to school and PTA meetings and whatever else, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that necessarily COVID changed that, but I think that for a lot of people, the baseline assumption that it's like you can kind of just assume that they have good intentions and their solutions are probably doing more good than harm or whatever, and that the people that are in charge of all these things have good intentions and that they're doing their best. I think that we've been disabused of that lie. A lot of people have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, that's my impression of Jimmy Carter, where it's like, well, and you got to understand too, it's like we've been living in this progressive era for 100 years. You know, where
that's right.
It's just this whole idea like, oh, if we come together as a nation, we can do great things. We can go to space.
Yeah.
We could, build these giant bridges. We could do all these things. And if everybody just puts a little bit of effort into it, when in this case, a little bit of your money, and then we hire a bunch of people,
then
we
lot of
could
your
do
money.
great things. We could build the Panama
And then
Canal
if you don't
and then give it away.
If you don't agree with it, then it's, oh yeah, he did that.
Yeah.
He gave away.
Right. And so it's kind of this like, well, okay, well then we're going to help education. Let's start at the department. That sounds like a great idea. Let's all work together and do that. But how many times do we have to see it over the last 100 years and being like, Oh, let's try this. Oh, this is a complete failure now. Oh, let's try this. Oh, it's a complete failure now. Everybody's poor. Inflation's more.
Yeah.
Like the standards or the bar is lowered more and more. Those people are worse off. They're less educated. Their health is worse.
Yep.
I think if you just stick to the, is this mine in the first place? Is it mine to give away? You know what I mean? A lot of that could be avoided. Like all of his ideas, everything you just mentioned is a dumb idea because it's all stolen goods.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think if you just go back to very fundamental principles.
Fruit of the poison tree.
I think
Right.
it's very symbolic that he died because he is a lot like Biden.
Right.
I mean,
The
they
end
both
of an old era.
they both administered to high inflation. I remember I was born in 1974, and my parents. I remember when Reagan was elected in 1980, and everything was like gas was more expensive. I remember waiting in line for gas, and it took forever to fill up the car. My mom would go and get cans, like collect cans to pay for stuff. I mean, inflation was super high. I'm reading. Go ahead.
For everyone who doesn't know what Michelle's talking about, it's to recycle them. You'd get paid a few cents per can.
Yeah.
That's all.
It
Keep
was.
going.
It was. So it's. I'm reading the Epic Times article about Carter, and it says there's a lot of. Okay, it says 5 moments that define Jimmy Carter's presidency. 1, Camp David. I don't know if you guys know about Camp David.
Remind us.
So, let me just read this. It says Carter's foreign policy efforts included pushing to improve relations between Israel and its neighbors. Normalizing diplomatic relations between Israel and Egypt became the central focus of his Middle Eastern policy. Complicating the process were internal pressures in the respective countries of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin. Amid signs Sadat would pull back from talks with Israel, Carter called a summit at the presidential retreat at Camp David in Maryland. Carter, Sadat, and Begin met for 12 days in September of 1978, and the parties deliberated over Israel-Egyptian relations and the challenges of Palestinian self-government. And after they got out, the meetings yielded 2 accords, one outlining a general Israeli-Egyptian peace and a second describing a plan for Palestinian governance in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. So, I mean, that was one. SALT II in Russia was the second. During his presidency, Carter sought to expand nuclear arms control between the United States and the Soviet Union in the hope of decreasing the risk of nuclear conflict in the Cold War era. Carter submitted SALT II to the Senate for ramification, but withdrew it on January 1980 following the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. So he tried to create a peace treaty with Soviets during the Cold War, and it didn't work, but he tried. And then China, Carter's efforts to improve relationship between the U.S. and China saw him solidify the regime's aim to assert greater power across the Taiwan Strait. The CCP considers Taiwan to be a part of China. Taiwan, by contrast, has maintained de facto independence from the Chinese mainland and governs itself as the Republic of China. The 37th President, Richard Nixon, put the U.S. on a path to normalizing relationships with the CCP when he visited China in February of 1972. And then expanding on that, Carter formalized the U.S. diplomatic relations with the people of China, recognizing it as the sole legal government of China. So, and then the last one was crisis of confidence. At home, Carter's presidency was troubled by high inflation and interest rates, unemployment, and persistent energy shortages throughout the 1970s. So it's very similar to what we're seeing with the end of Biden's administration.
So in other words, he let the government spend extraordinary amounts.
Yep.
More than normal.
Yep.
I see.
Yep. So,
He's gullible.
yeah, I think so. Yep. I mean, the Iran hostages, I was always taught this. Maybe you guys learned differently. But so in 1979, the supporters of the Iranian Revolution stormed the U.S. Embassy in Iran, and then they took 52 American hostages. And so then they were trying to have negotiations and release the hostages, but it never panned out. And then I guess Carter sent the Operation Eagle Claw, which was a plan to send 8 Navy helicopters and I guess sort of a kind of special forces thing to get them out, and it failed. But then Reagan defeated Carter in the 1980 election, and before he was even, well, actually, they let the hostages go on January 20th of 1981. That's how strong Reagan was.
Inauguration day. Wow.
They didn't. I mean, he didn't have to do anything. Just by him getting inaugurated, they let the hostages go.
Yeah.
And we have the
Sounds a lot
same
like Trump.
situation.
Yeah, yeah.
I wonder what's going to happen with the Hamas and the Israeli hostages. Trump has said, you better let them go, and we'll see if they do that. But
That's
it's
interesting.
very similar, the two presidencies.
Yeah.
The only difference is Carter, I felt like, had good intentions, and I don't get that with Biden at
Right.
all.
So it's interesting, since you are always trying to bait me into talking about Israel.
I was just teasing.
So I will say a couple things. So the prime minister's name was Menachem Begin, is the way they pronounce it.
Begin. I said
Mhm.
begin.
And
I don't know how.
I'm just saying.
I
I'm just
know.
telling.
Thank you for correcting
Yeah,
that.
I'm just for anybody who is familiar with that name.
Begin.
And so it's interesting because it's like he was the leader of a Zionist terrorist organization before Israel was a state. One of the things that they did is they bombed a British administrative building to destroy records showing that that there were militant groups, Zionist militant groups, that were getting ready for stuff and carrying out terrorist operations.
So he was the Arafat of the Israelis.
Right. So he was like a terrorist that became a prime
The
minister,
president, like the
Yeah,
Arafat,
exactly.
right? Exactly like
so
that.
like imagine like going to these like peace accords, right? And so it's like you have this like, not you, but just in general, you're like, oh well, the prime minister, this man in the suit and tie or whatever, is going in good faith to talk about, but it's like this was a person that from the very beginning was plotting like, how are we going to take all this land? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I suspect that somebody like Carter is just completely ignorant, where it's like, I'm just going to get these people together. And
I'm
like,
sure he knew of his background.
Well, to a degree, right? But I
to
just
me, it's
feel like
similar to the Taliban. I mean, we're making negotiations with the Taliban for Afghanistan before Trump left office.
Well, Al Qaeda just took Syria, and people here are celebrating about it. We backed Al Qaeda in the
Oh my
war
gosh.
against Syria for years and
and they
years
were
and
our
years.
enemy
Right.
after 9/11.
Yeah,
and
that's traitorous.
this is ridiculous.
You know what I mean?
It's just getting completely
So
out of hand.
anyway, it's just nuts. But
In other words, you're saying one man's leader is another man's terrorist, right?
sure, right, and just that I when I was growing up, it was always like, because I'd hear about these Camp David negotiations, these Camp David Accords, and different presidents, are always
Yeah.
trying to do this thing. My favorite part of the movie Clueless is when she walks in and Paul Rudd is watching TV and the news is on and there's like, more violence in the Middle East, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I thought we declared peace in the Middle East, where it's like evergreen joke, right? Because it's always that way. And so I kind of always had this sense where it's like, well, why couldn't they work it out? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's just like way more hostile than anybody gives it credit to. And I think that in the case of like Carter, it's like there was no chance. Like, you know what I mean? It's like a good thing to do to show that you're trying to help in the region. But I don't think that there was like any way that was going to work.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
If you want to hear something funny about Jimmy Carter dying, you should listen to Scott Adams talk about it.
Oh.
When
Really?
he died a couple days ago, he does his daily podcast, his simultaneous sip. And he was saying that Jimmy Carter, well, first he's like, he couldn't have stuck the landing better, and then talks about all the things that he did right by dying when he did.
Why
But,
do you
like,
say that?
well, like, he made it through Christmas,
Yeah.
like with his loved ones, but then he didn't have to stay up all night and wait till midnight on New Year's. So he got to skip that. And he also outlived his wife, so she didn't have to lose him. You know what I mean? And so, like, some nice, genuinely nice things and stuff.
Oh.
But then he talks about how that Carter is literally the reason why he said, so he voted when he was, of voting age, right? Like 18 or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And that happened to be the election with Carter and Reagan. And he voted for Carter because because Carter was the angel and Reagan was the devil, you know?
Really?
That's the way that
What
it
you heard
was-
on the news.
Yeah, that's the way
Uh-huh.
the news told it.
Even back then?
Of course. Yes.
It's crazy.
And but then when he watched
See, I grew up with Reagan was the guy. Like, maybe it's because of my household, the community I lived in.
right.
Reagan,
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure. I think he was in California.
But that was after Carter
Well, California.
screwed up so badly.
I mean,
No, not yet.
okay.
Yeah, so Carter won.
Yeah.
And then he
Against
watched,
Reagan?
I think before.
No, he didn't beat Reagan.
We'll figure it out. But his point was that as he watched Carter's presidency unfold, that he realized how horrific it all was.
It was awful.
And so then he decided that he wasn't fit to vote. And he took off voting for decades.
Because he's like, I should never have voted for this guy.
He's like, I'm only making things worse here. So then he stopped for decades, like
It's
40
hilarious.
years.
And then
And
when
it-
did he
it-
first? When
with
did he come
Trump.
back? That's funny. Hilarious.
So it was Carter, and his vice president on the ticket was Mondale.
Yeah,
Mondale
Carter and Mondale.
versus Ford and Bob Dole.
Oh, it was
Actually.
Bob Dole, who ran again in 1996.
Wow.
Right.
He was probably only like 95 then.
And and Walter Mondale ran against Reagan,
in
after-
1984.
ra-
for a
after
second election.
after Reagan beat Carter.
Why did Reagan pick George Bush, the CIA director, as his running mate?
So there was a recent episode, well, not that recent, but a while ago, on Tom Woods. He had a guy on talking about how important the vice presidency is. You know, we tend to value it a little bit. And that in his lifetime, I think he was saying, or maybe it was like since Reagan, that every like vice president, especially with the GOP, has been like a war hawk. And I think, if I remember correctly, he was kind of saying that is kind of the olive branch that they extend to the deep state, being like, okay, we're going to put your guy in as this, and then he'll be able to run next time, type of a thing, you know? And I think that's kind of a similar thing with Mike Pence. I'm not saying that he was necessarily a war hawk. He just seems like a nothing. Yeah, that was the Mondale one, right?
No, this is the Carter-Reagan one, 1980.
Well, what about
Wow.
I thought the Mondale one was
'Cause of
worse.
inflation.
I know.
I think it was only
See, it's the same
we're
thing.
looking at an electoral map for our audio listeners.
Yeah, it looks very, very similar to the colors of this last
Yeah,
election.
it's-
And it's
Yeah.
the inflation.
1984 was the same, except it was just Minnesota.
You start stealing
Right.
from everybody in higher numbers than they're used to. They
Right.
start to react.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
But yeah, what was I saying?
I don't know, but I've been waiting to talk about something else.
All right.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Sure.
please
You guys
do.
ready?
Yeah.
So the other day.
Do you want to
Yeah.
do some local stuff?
I got Yeah, this is local.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So our son is learning how to parallel park, getting ready for his driver's test.
Oh,
know?
boy.
So we went and we were practicing out front with with our own cars, you know.
Our 3 white vehicles.
And he was doing great, but our neighbors noticed and just trying to be helpful. They mentioned usefully that in Hondo there's like this spot where they used to have a DMV, like a driving school or something like that. And they put up these like permanent spring type cone things, you know?
Oh,
Like these things, these yellow sticks out of the ground that are springy for practicing parallel parking.
where's this at?
It's on 14th Street at a dead end,
Thank you,
kind
sir.
of not very far from the rec center on the north side of 90. Anyway,
This makes
So-
edits hard because then we like come in with higher energy after we laugh at something.
okay, so anyway, there's this spot that is dedicated specifically to parallel parking, and there's nothing around and nobody around. It's a dead end. And this was January 1st in the morning. So there is never a time when there are fewer people out in an area where few people live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On a day when no one is awake, right? In the
It
morning.
really is that way because everybody has it off pretty much.
Right.
and everybody is expected to stay up late the night before.
Right.
There's
And they
no
all
other day
did.
like that.
Yes. And it's a dead end street
Yeah.
with no traffic on a normal day, right? Okay, so we're practicing there and just kind of over and over again using these things and
How
and
did
then
he do?
he did great.
Great.
Yeah. He's, it's like it's hard because I've never really tried to articulate how to parallel park. Like, have you ever tried giving someone instructions on how to do it as
Yes.
they're doing it?
I have a way of doing it.
No.
What?
In fact,
I'd like to know later.
when our
but-
son asked us, I said, I don't know, Mom's better at it than I am. She'll be able to teach you better than
I
me.
have decided I'm contracting it out with. I'm gonna hire someone to teach her to drive. The initial driving, because I
Right.
don't. My
The
nerves
first few
after
weeks.
the two kids, the older two,
Almost killed you.
my anxiety level was way too
Well, you
high.
should try these little springy things.
Yeah. Okay, so here's what happened. He's practicing, doing great, and out of nowhere, because no one is alive in Hondo at this time, here comes a cop car, pulls up next to us,
Oh,
and, rolls down the window. So he rolls down the window, and he's like, hi, And then the cop, who had very fresh eyelashes put on, and great makeup and everything, she's like, what are y'all doing?
female.
Yeah. And it's like, I let do the talking, which I think was the right thing.
Mhm.
But my little inner voice is like,
Don't
does
worry
it-
about it.
what does it look like we're doing? We're like going in and out, parallel parking between these parallel parking cones. What else could we possibly be doing? There is literally no other thing. I mean, can you think of a thing?
I think it looks, we're doing exactly what it looks like we're doing.
Right. So the only thing I did allow myself to say, to jump out of me, was just like, oh, well, we were told that these things were here for this very purpose. And, her response was, but he answered better. And he was just like, yeah, we're practicing parallel parking. And then what she said was, well, just so y'all know, this is a roadway. So you need to watch out for vehicles still. And, and just like proceeded to, just tell us what to do and stuff. And just like, it's like, oh, is it? I mean,
This is a dead end.
we thought we were in fields, like, just hay fields or something. Anyway, so here's what I want to say about
Are
this
they
story.
trained to state the obvious? Is that what they're trained to do?
I think trained is the right word. And it actually, I was just thinking about this a lot recently from, there's this book that we recently listened to for this business class. It's called Thou Shalt Prosper.
Thou shalt prosper.
Thou shall, not shalt. You're right. Prosper. And he talks about how he doesn't even like the word trained for like when you get trained for a job, because we train dogs and stuff like that. We train animals, but it's really,
So
you're
you're saying
demeaning, right?
that in a canine unit, there are two dogs?
Well, you have to understand from a mental health and a psychology aspect, that's very Pavlovian to train.
I know. Yeah.
So-
Yeah. It's repetition, like
Yeah, that's
repetitious
right.
rewards and punishments.
Uh-huh.
Right. So anyway,
Signals, rewards, that
what
kind of thing.
so here's what I really think they are trained to do
What?
is tell you what to do. I don't even know if they're really trained or if it's just like they're like, oh, I have this job that I don't really understand and I'm in this position of authority and I've stopped you.
I better
I'm
say something.
I'm harassing you right now. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I better take control.
I better
right?
say something.
Yeah, because they feel like an idiot.
My favorite is when they pulled me over on base one day. And it's, imagine base. I don't know if you guys have been on a base, but the speed limits are a lot less. So if it's
Yeah.
25, it's 15.
We have. It's
Yeah.
very painful.
It's really annoying. So one of my kids was on the base. They were attending the base school. I was just dropping them off, and I was going around 20 miles an hour. I was speeding. Right.
You're a
I
devil.
got pulled over by military police, which they're worse than police. And the guy comes
More
out.
strict, we'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says to me, "What are you in a hurry for?" I'm like, "In a hurry? Going 20 miles an hour." It was just funny to me, those dumb little taglines.
Right.
You got somewhere you got to be in a hurry? I'm like, that's not a hurry, but okay.
What
I
if
think I got a
do?
ticket.
But I
'cause
do
I was
have
a
somewhere I
smart
want to
A.
be eventually.
I was like,
That's why I'm driving.
I got a ticket. He gave me a ticket because I was a smart A. I was like, "Gotta hurry! It's
Yeah,
like
that's
20
what I've
miles an
Oh, you
always
hour."
really said that. These aren't just your thoughts.
And then I had to go to a federal court to fight it because
Wow.
it was on a military installation.
So here's what I want to say about this story, though, as I had been thinking about it, is what they need to understand is that anytime they talk to you, they are harassing you. So they shouldn't say stupid stuff to you. They shouldn't stop you for stupid reasons. You know what I mean? They shouldn't drive up to you without observing the most obvious and be like, what are you doing? It's like, you have a gun and you have too much power. You can take money from me. You can waste my time. You can make me go places like court or whatever and stuff like that. Don't come up to me and ask me stupid questions because that's harassment. It is.
You should tell that other story that happened to you
I have to
When you're
think
being
about the details.
when you were being
Oh,
followed.
yeah. That one's really funny. This also involves our good friends who are neighbors. They had put...
Oh, no,
Okay.
no. This isn't. Is this the story you were talking
No,
about?
this
No.
is
It
the
is.
no, it's not.
No.
Don't tell that story. The one I'm talking about is you going on 90 towards soccer practice.
That is the one.
Oh, it is? I
Yes.
was thinking it was something else.
I'll
Okay.
You're
start
going
it
to talk about
differently.
the game order one.
No,
Yeah,
not
it
that
is.
one. Not that one.
one.
No, this one.
Got a lot
we're
of-
on.
Emily's a little rebel.
Maybe they do listen
Maybe
to
we
the
shouldn't
podcast.
tell this story.
Okay, this one. Yeah, we're on 90 going from Hondo to Castroville to get to soccer. And as we're going, there's like a huge, we're in a little car and there's a huge, there's a big truck behind us on our tail consistently. And at first, I think they were just on our tail in the left lane. So then I moved to the right lane, but then they also did, and they stayed with me. I sped up, slowed down. I tried all different things to get them to go away,
Shake 'em.
Yeah, shake them off. It was a dogfight,
She's trying to put in Taylor Swift. Shake it up.
So then, they just tailgated me the whole way, no matter what. So then I started, pulling out some other tricks, like I'm going to turn suddenly without giving you a lot of warning because I'm in a little car and you're in a big truck. And surely this will work. But it didn't. And they ended up following me all the way to the park. This is a dude in a big truck. And
It's
so
just
then,
a civilian, not like a cop. It's a civilian.
just some truck. So then we pull in, and then they don't go around. I guess what stopped them was the pain of going around that mile-long loop at 10 miles an hour. Just too much for the time. You know what I mean? She just gave up. So I went around it, grateful that they quit and weren't gonna follow me home and murder me or something. And then I parked. The boys rushed out to get to their practice on time. And then, like 2 minutes later, a cop car pulled up and came up to me. I was still sitting in the car because I was listening to, I was listening to something. And came up and I rolled down the window and he asked me, how I was doing or something. Dumb, It's like, my
My
answer is
gosh.
always better before now, like. Anyway, and then he's like, well, we got a complaint. And I'm thinking, what? Like someone complained about me? I should be complaining. I mean, I'm just not so whiny, I guess. And then he tells me that somebody complained that I was driving all crazy. And so then I told him, well, if you're talking about a guy in a big truck, that's because he was harassing me on the road. He was following me no matter what I did, right behind me. And then, anyway, and then the guy was like, okay, yep, have a good day. Like clearly kind of embarrassed. No, actually before that, he told me that it was an off-duty cop. That's
There
who
it
this
is.
guy was. But what the funny thing is about this story is that when he came up and could see that I was a, probably not very likely criminal with my kids getting out and
A literal soccer mom.
a literal
The
soccer mom.
most literal way possible.
And then probably felt embarrassed and left. What I realized afterwards when I got back out is that I still had these bullet hole stickers on the back of the
from
car
Halloween.
that our
From Halloween.
friends stuck on our car. And I had left it because I thought, well, I don't want to ruin their good time. Let's at least get through Halloween with these things.
Yeah.
I mean, they're funny, And I think that the cop who came up, he was close enough that he could see these were fake. And I think the guy driving thought they were real. And so then he
Interesting.
was like, there's too many things. She's driving kind of erratically, even though it was because of him. You know what I
Right.
mean?
This is what I think. I have
Didn't
my
you
own.
say something about there being kids in the car too?
Yeah, he thought that they were bouncing around and not buckled and throwing balls and stuff like that. It's like, well, okay, I can see why it would look that way, but they were buckled, you know.
Yeah.
And there is a ball that one of mine was kind of like throwing up and down in the back seat.
You are on your way to soccer after all,
Right, and they are kids.
in a minivan.
You know what I think happened?
It wasn't me. It was
I
a
think
car.
I think you might have pulled out in front of him on accident,
Maybe.
and then he got pissed off, and he rode your tail, and because this is what it attracts in the
Authority,
police
yeah.
authority. Then he went ahead and called one of his buddies, and then
yeah.
you know what I'm saying? That's what I think.
I think it's a good theory. The only
That's just
the
a
only thing
conspiracy
about
theory, Michelle.
The only problem with your theory is I'm pretty good about not pulling out in front of people.
Okay, maybe.
And
I'm
then
wrong.
my other, and because the guy in the mystery truck was young,
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe it's that he was trying to get some good street cred with his superiors.
I just
you
can't
know?
imagine him with a bullet hole thing, with a minivan.
It wasn't. It
It
was
was
a car.
the car. Sorry,
Oh,
that
it
my
was the
mistake,
car.
yeah.
It was
Yeah.
the car. Okay. I
It's
was
probably
like,
a little dirty, you know.
I
It's
don't
got
know.
that hail
I just
damage
know
on it.
men. What is it with men? Maybe Joe can answer this. What is it with men and driving and road rage and testosterone? What happens when you get
I think
behind
you
those
just
cars?
said all of it. You threw
My
all the
gosh.
ingredients.
Well, I am a pretty calm driver.
Okay. You don't get mad when someone pulls out in front of you,
I used to get really mad.
and then
I decided it wasn't worth dying over.
I think Joe checked out.
I think you need to talk to Jay a little bit.
No, I've thought about this a lot. And it's like, if you commute every day,
Yeah.
and especially when we lived in Washington, and you're sitting in traffic all the time, you're commuting like for anywhere from 45 minutes to over an hour each way. And then if you're going to spend that time mad, you're just going to be mad all the time.
I know, because
Like,
you can't
a part of
control
you
that
it.
died
is
on
your
I-5.
life. Huh?
A part of you died on I-5.
That's right.
You got one of those crosses with flowers all over on the side of the road.
Joe's anger died on the side at this intersection. But I mean, I feel it's so much better that way. You know, it's like you're not, and I think that for me also, I make so many mistakes on the road. I think
You're begging for mercy.
I'm begging for mercy the whole time. I mean, it's just that when somebody does something, I think that could have been me, you know? And
Yeah.
I'm not begging for mercy all the times, but I think that the times when I do make a mistake and somebody has to slow down because of me and they're obviously mad, yeah, I really feel it. Like, I used to be the same way.
Yeah.
If somebody did that to me, I'd be really mad.
So you're
you know?
self-aware. That's good. Okay, so on this note of driving in cars, there's some news in Texas. Did you guys know about inspections, vehicle inspections?
Yes. It's really
Good
silly.
news. It's no longer required.
But you do still pay for it.
What?
Yeah, $7.
Oh, really? It says drivers will
I
no
think
longer
we know
be.
the reason that they were doing it for so long. Now they're just cutting out the middleman.
All right.
Oh, you're saying they just want the $7.
Look, guys, you got us.
There it is, right
Just
there.
give us the money. We won't
She's
make you
right.
waste time.
Drivers will no longer be required to get annual safety inspections beginning in January 1st. The Texas Standard reported. However, drivers in the state's 17 most populous counties will still be required to get an emissions test in order to get registered. We won't.
We don't. Yeah.
While mandatory vehicle inspections are going the way of the pay phone and video cassette recorders, drivers will still end up paying $750 inspection replacement.
$750? I thought it was $7.
Now it's $750.
Jeez.
They're like, listen,
We're
we
gonna
give you a little, you give us a little. We're not even gonna inspect it. We just need your money, and we're gonna need a little bit more.
But
Is
here's
it your
the thing.
time worth 50 cents?
I'm so glad. I almost would just rather give them the money. I don't want
They
their
know
stupid
that.
inspection.
That's
Yeah,
why.
exactly.
That's
Well,
why
do you wanna know
people
why?
are- Yes.
When I was
Todo se puede
We
in
took-
Texas.
we took one of our cars in, and they go, "You're gonna have to take the tinting off your window." I'm like, "Excuse me?" They're like, the tinting off your window, and they did this little measurement on it, and I said it's too dark. I'm like, I didn't even put this on there. It came in the factory when we bought it this way. Well, you're going to have to remove it in order to pass.
Where
I'm
was this? Divine?
do I have to slip you $20 just to sign this paper? Yes, it was in Divine. I was so annoyed. So I found someone else who did it for
Right.
me. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
So, and I don't know what the rules are here because I don't know that we've ever failed in emissions. I don't even think we've
They don't
done
do
it.
it.
Yeah, okay. But in Washington, you needed an emissions test every 2 years, I think, unless your car was old enough.
in Washington, it was
Mhm.
2 years? Oh,
I think
that's
so.
nice.
And
Wait, inspection or emissions?
emissions.
Oh.
We didn't do an inspection. It was just an emissions test.
Okay.
Well, they would inspect your car while you were, I'm pretty sure, while you were
I
getting
don't
the
think
emissions
so.
test.
Do you know, Joe, you've never done them here. I always do it.
No. I'm saying
what
in
they
Washington,
do here for inspections, no, but you're saying they do inspections there. Do you know what they do?
they look around the car.
They check your blinkers, your headlights, your taillights.
I think they do. I think they did that in Washington while you were doing the emissions test. Because
Maybe
you had to
so.
get out
Okay.
of your car, and then they would get in, and they would, bzzz, do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think that they checked those things.
Okay.
Anyway, if you failed the emissions test, they had this law that if you spent a certain amount of money to try to repair your car,
Yeah,
so
there
that
was
it
like a
would pass,
max.
Yeah, that then they would just pass you because they're like, well, we're not going to have people spend thousands of dollars trying to track down this problem. And so there'd be all these repair places around the emissions place, and it's like guaranteed pass emissions, and it's like $150 tune-up or whatever. But that's how much, like, the amount that they charged, that they guaranteed that you would pass emissions for, was the maximum amount that you would have to spend in order to not have to spend more to pass emissions. So it was just basically like, if you fail emissions,
time.
you have to pay a shop this amount of money and then bring their paper back, and then we'll pass you.
That's how it was in Utah, too. You had to pay a certain amount.
Inspections are like babysitting. And it's you saying, look, I'll pay you not to babysit me. And them saying, okay, you're right.
I know, it's true.
This is ridiculous. One adult babysitting another. Fine, just give us the money.
That's why I referenced, I don't know if you heard me, like in Mexico, apparently they say todo se puede in Mexico. Like, how would you,
Everything's possible. Anything's
Yeah.
possible.
anything can do in
And
Mexico.
that's like, give me whatever money you got.
Yeah,
and
so
I'll
it's like if you
let it
have
slide.
enough money and you go to the municipal building and you're like, well, I need this permit, I need this, whatever. It's like, oh, you give me a little bit of,
You slide a little money.
and so in Washington, it's the same way. It's just more official. It's like, yeah, we can process your application for that. If you pay a fee to expedite the process, we'll do it a lot
More
faster.
pretending.
You know what I mean? It's like, well, it's still just paying more money to get preference.
So stupid.
And, if you pay this fee, we'll make sure that your paperwork is in order so it doesn't get rejected. You know what I mean? It's all
So
the
it doesn't
same
get
thing.
lost
Yeah.
in our
It's all the
files.
same thing, but it's just more official. I prefer the Mexico way because at least the workers are getting a cut.
Okay, listen
It's
to
funny
this.
because I had another slogan in my mind, which was the Javier Milei, afuera, right? Like inspections, afuera.
Afuera. Rip it off. So get this. Texas now home to more than 31 million. The Lone Star State added nearly 563,000 residents in the last year, according to the U.S. Census Bureau.
Residents.
What did I say?
I know. That is what you said. Not citizens.
Right. I'm going to keep reading. The Tribune reported the state's growth has slowed, though the 1.8% growth rate is still the third highest in the country, behind Florida and the District of Columbia. Why is
DC,
DC's growing because of this stupid bureaucracy? Maybe it will be cut down now.
Oh, man, I hope so.
Roughly 40% of the state's new residents came from net international migration.
Half of the new
Of the
people?
new-
Mm-hmm.
How many new people? Did it say?
1.8%.
It was 563,000 new residents.
Wow.
40% come from 319,569 new residents from abroad, the Census Bureau said. Texas still led the country in migration from other states, adding 85,267 people in the last year who moved here from another state. The slowing of domestic migration means Texas will likely rely on international migration to meet the labor needs of a booming state economy, according to Lloyd Potter,
You know where
the
they
state
should all go?
demographer. demographer.
We were just reading. I was helping my youngest son with his language arts today. We were reading about Canada, and it like doing, or no, this was math, where they tell you the population. You can do these little math problems about it. Anyway, Saskatchewan has like only 1 point some million people. That whole big province. And other ones, all the ones north of the border ones are even less, right? I don't even think they mentioned those populations. They're so low. That's where they should all go.
To the cold?
Yeah, they should all go to Saskatchewan.
They're not going
Nova
to the cold.
Scotia.
It's too cold.
Prince Edward's Island.
It's freezing.
There's plenty of space up there.
Here's
Work
my
to be done.
question to the governor, to the comptrollers across the fruited plains of Texas.
Controller.
We have all these people, new residents, or new revenue, new homes. Why are you increasing our property taxes? Why not just let it be the same rate, actually lower them? And now that you have all this new revenue, you don't need anymore. I don't want to hear your stupid arguments about new school. I don't think the population is growing that much in the schools to where you have to buy. Anyways.
You know what I think? And maybe one of our friends who works in the government can clear this up. But I have this theory that during COVID, there was all this extra, quote unquote, money that went to the schools because it was all Zoom and they didn't have all the same expenses and all this stuff. And different districts did different things with it. But
that makes no sense, though. If no one's in the schools, why are they getting more money?
Because they're still getting, so in Texas, they get an allocation of money based on attendance. But then, like, when you assume everybody's attending, and then...
Plus no AC, because they're not running the physical buildings.
You're not running the buildings. You're not running the transportation, all the buses. But the whole busing, like, that is just so much money, like, for maintenance of those, all of it. And so... I think, what could happen is like, oh, well, we're going to allocate this money for all these different things. And then it's like, oh, well, to keep up with the same spending and the same, whatever we got this last time, we're going to need more money,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part of that too is like, oh, well, now's a great time to start these building projects, to finally build this building that we've been talking about or whatever, and buy this land or whatever. And then you're in this situation where you need more money to continue. And it's like, well, just to meet the demands of what we have, we're going to do it. I think another thing, this is just another theory that's not backed by anything, is that if everybody's coming from New York and California, all these places, and it's like they're used to paying a lot more. And so it's like, oh, well, all these new residents, like they'll buy these houses at these higher tax rates. And it's like all this new money. And then the people that are just still here, and there's all this inflation, and their house price, their theoretical house price, is going up with all these people buying houses and having a lot of money, disposable money, to spend on these houses. It's like makes the supposed cost of your house go up, and then your tax burden go up because of it. Then them adding more tax rate to that, I think it's just what they feel like they can get away with.
But
I think that's always the answer.
The whole thing is what they feel like they can get away with.
I agree
That's
with
it.
that.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping...
If you're willing to steal a certain amount of money continuously, what is stopping you? And on the premise, or the basis of lies, what is to stop you from just taking more if you think you can forever?
Well, I'm hoping that, remember this last election and how I think it was during the primaries where they asked the Republicans what they felt. Remember all those amendments and stuff? They were asking us about that. They asked if we wanted to get rid of property taxes, and it passed, like, overwhelmingly. So my hope is that's going to be the new priority for this coming legislation for the state legislature up there in Austin.
Yeah, so it does seem... So actually, I was just listening to Tom Woods. He had a guy on there talking about this today, but they were talking about 1 year with Javier Milei and how the Doge, with Elon and Vivek, this
Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, this idea actually comes from Milei. It's something that they did. I can't remember their version of it in Spanish, but same thing where they opened there's a department and their only job is to deregulate. and that's all they're doing. And they have like a ticker, like a countdown. They're supposed to get a certain amount per day and how many days they have left to meet their goal. And that they've actually like balanced the budget and all this stuff. They've done kind of amazing things in 1 year. And anyway, but that there's like other places, you know, not just Trump. I can't remember who else they mentioned, but it's like it is influencing other leaders and stuff like that. It is spreading. So I hope that as the ideas and, you know, like just the enlightenment basically of it all spreads, that eventually it'll get to it.
It's empowering libertarian and conservative ideas.
Right. Yeah. Like Republicans are receptive to it for the first time. And I hope it gets to a local level, you know, and not just federal.
I mean, there's new ideas popping up, which I think I've been talking about this for years. Like, we need to be creative. Like, just because things in the past or what we did in the past does not mean it's the right thing. For instance, they're debating in Divine to do a 4-day week for their school because they're doing it in Natalia. Now, Natalia's struggles because they're a little small district. So I'm not sure that it's working for Natalia, but Divine's definitely considering it. And they're actually at a standoff right now. It's a split. They haven't decided yet. But my whole thing is like, why do we need a 5-day school? Why do we need how many hours a day do they go to school now? Is it 6, 7? You know,
right.
What is the reasoning behind that? And
I think
who does it benefit?
Right. I think that a calculation like that is about as arbitrary and random as the 6 feet distance, that COVID number that they came up with arbitrarily.
You think that? But I mean, if you read some of these academics, they really think in order for you to get in everything that they want your kids to know, they have to come in. How many days did we decide it was 180 of the year?
I believe it's 180, yeah.
And then that equals out to be how many hours? Do you know? It's like 180 times.
But you can just, anyone who has been thinking long enough and experiencing real life, so that kind of excludes academics. They've been doing a lot of thinking but not experiencing real life, will know that is ridiculous to just prescribe a certain number of hours per year for all humans. Because there's wild variation in learning, types of learning rates, willingness, you know what I mean? Or like parental involvement, which affects everything. Like all of it. It's just so ridiculous to prescribe that for all people.
I think what it is, I think that the way that they come up with, we need to extend the day by this much time, we need to cut out this break or whatever, is that they have a certain curriculum or curricula that they have to teach in order to continue to get the funding that they get from state, federal, county, city, you know, whatever.
Right, but the question is, I mean, the funding is based on that idea.
Right, but all I'm saying is that it's like you have to kind of show like, okay, well, these are the 10 things that we're going to try to teach every day, whatever. So it's like, you're going to allocate a certain amount of time for this and a minimum of this, minimum of that, minimum of whatever, in order to do all those things. But like what you're saying is like, that doesn't make any sense because that's not the way that people learn. Even if somebody were really good at learning that environment where it's like, you're going to focus on this subject, and then you're going to focus on this subject, and then you're going to focus, and you're going to learn it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, really,
it's as ridiculous as any other recommendations that they make, though. Like, 2,000 calories is the right amount of calories for all humans.
Right.
Like, as though there's no variation of metabolic intake and output and stuff like that. Or everyone needs, like, the food pyramid, or, I don't know, what are some of their other like blanket policy
Just
recommendations?
like
everyone should be vaccinated.
Yeah, all humans need all these vaccines.
It doesn't matter whether we have an autoimmune disorder or whatever.
No, none
of that matters. Everyone should receive the vaccine.
Right.
That's like assuming we're all made the same.
Right.
And our bodies have the same chemistry and the same hormone balance and the same metabolic rate and all of that stuff.
Right. And why are adults in general, right? But I think it's funnier to say, why is one adult man telling another adult man what to do?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, everything about it is stupid.
Yeah.
Well, we've
It's
kind of
the opposite of custom.
We've talked about this on the podcast before, I think. But there's this idea that it's like, well, if somebody's an expert, I'm not going to try to recreate the wheel. I'm just going to rely on an expert because they've put all this time and effort into learning this,
Yeah.
and I don't want to become an expert, and I can't. I don't have the time to become an expert on every single thing that touches my life. So, and the default mode for so long was, well, that's what the government's for. They have the CDC. These people, that's their whole job. They have people in lab coats looking at this stuff all the time. So if there's anybody you trust them. And then it's like, okay, take that off my plate. Great. I really appreciate it. Okay, now we have the FDA. They're going to make sure that the drugs that I buy, if it's legal for me to buy and if it's legal for a doctor to prescribe it, then it's got to be safe, right? They've made sure. I don't have to think about that. Take that off my plate, But now everything's on the table.
Yeah.
Well, once you start seeing the the puppies with cones on their head and the cat amputees and what are some other the crazy animal experiments?
Isle
cruelty
of
things.
Dr. Moreau experiments of Anthony Fauci.
Jeez. Well,
You've seen these, right?
I haven't. You're gonna have to show it
Oh,
to me.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
fascinated. Is
It's
it?
all kinds of torture.
The flesh-eating flies
It's
on a
not
dog.
true, is it?
Yeah,
Oh, no, it is. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It doesn't surprise me. I found this. This will be a good. You guys will like this. This will be a good, interesting thought.
How much are you going to
Conversation.
read this time?
Gee, did I read too much last time? All right, I'm trying. Listen, I didn't have much time to show prep, so I'm kind of just like
Yeah.
spitballing this. So I'll just read this first paragraph. I found this on educationreimagine.org. And it said, how did we land on 180 days? Okay. In the early days of American public education, school ran like libraries. Free classes were held, and children only attended when it was convenient. If you want to know, that's true. I mean, like, read To Kill a Mockingbird. They talk about one of the families that would come sometimes to school, not always.
Which, by the way, what would happen, I think, is that assuming you had parents who paid attention, and you know what I mean, then it would be like tutoring,
Yeah.
which is the way that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I've thought about this a lot, and I've tried teaching different classes to kids, and it's just like it just does not work to try and stuff information into kids' heads if they aren't at that moment yet interested in it.
Mm-hmm. That's
But
right.
if then they come to you, then it's like, voila, you got it. So
Yeah.
that's what it's like, drop-in tutoring.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
It says responsibilities at home and on the farm came first. School came second. As industrialization and the number of factories increased, children were seen as a cheap and effective form of labor, pushing school even further down the priority list. First, for all of these reasons, in 1890, the average child went to school only about 86 days a year.
Well, you never want to let school get in the way of a good education.
That's what I'm saying.
Is that Mark Twain?
Yeah.
And then it said,
It's ironic, though, because it's like, just like lots of things with capitalism, the selfish incentives benefited everybody.
yeah.
I'm not even saying they're wrong. I'm just saying, like, I know that's what that person is, whoever wrote that. They're saying that selfishly they were using the cheap labor of children, to the detriment of their education. But they learned more doing than they would sitting and listening.
I don't know if that's what this article's saying because it says reimagine education. Like
Okay.
they're
Yeah.
saying
Right.
look at it differently.
Gotcha. Okay.
It says if it wasn't for education reformer Horace Mann and increased
Talked about
pressure
him before.
from teachers, parents, and church groups to restrict child labor, public education may have remained tertiary for decades to come. In 1852, Mann enacted compulsory school attendance law in Massachusetts.
This
Biggest
sounds like
mistake
they're
ever.
pro this.
No, they're just giving the history.
Okay.
By 1918, progressive movement, the rest of the country had followed suit, increasing average attendance to 120 days. Shockingly enough, it took until 1938 for Congress to pass the Fair Labor and Standards Act that officially fixed the minimum working age at 16 for most professions. It's the Fair Labor
So that
Act.
can't be now, though.
Well,
yeah, it's still
I think,
16.
I think that there's exceptions.
There must be.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked when I was like 14, 15.
But I don't think you could work 40 hours a week.
Oh, is that what
Yeah,
it is? Full-time?
probably.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says as American labor laws changed and child labor was outlawed, children were freed up to attend school more regularly. By 1974, average school attendance was up to 160 days. And over the years, different states have come to mandate between 170 and 185 days per school. The motivations behind this 180 day target and compulsory education more broadly is up for debate. Horace Mann claimed, quote, education beyond all other devices of human origin is a great equalizer of conditions of men. The balance wheel of the social machinery. It does better than disarm the poor of their hostility toward the rich. It prevents being poor.
Ironic.
Unquote. Although man seems to express accessible education for the masses as a moral imperative, the historical record shows less heroic reasonings, including a desire to assimilate
Right.
immigrant populations and young people generally into the dominant U.S. culture.
And to create a class of workers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just a really evil perspective to think that it's worth it for the underdog, or it's worth it to sacrifice those who are doing well for the underdog. I think that's bad. I think people need to imagine new ways instead. You know, it's not just because somebody's doing well doesn't mean you should sacrifice them.
Yeah.
You know?
So Emily mentioned before we were helping out with this business class, right? And we taught a couple lessons about Carnegie and Edison and
Tesla.
Well, Tesla and Edison kind of
Go together.
Yeah. But and then who was anyway, kind of these early figures and their business acumen and all this stuff. And it's interesting because I think it was Carnegie. Yeah, it was Carnegie, where he kind of started out pretty poor and worked, right? When he was like
really young.
Really young. I think was he the Bobbin boy? Yeah,
he was.
And but the way that he got his education is that there was like this man. He was like a captain or general or colonel or something like that had a personal library of 400 books, and he would allow kids to come, and maybe it wasn't everybody, but he allowed him to come and just peruse his selection. And so all the time that he had, he would, free time, between working, he would go and read. And so he was self-taught. I mean, that was the education. And it kind of came from that a lot of his philanthropy and just like the modern library system can kind of be tracked to Carnegie for that reason. Like he was really big into it, all these endowments to create these libraries. But it's like, if you look at that situation, you're like, we want that for all kids. We want that for everybody. That would be great. But the thing is that there's still the question of agency, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, we've built these libraries, but they're not going to school enough. We got to put them into school for longer. You're too busy at home and all these other things. If we just put you where the library is, then learning will happen.
So you're saying
you know
that
what I mean?
the goal was to get them to be where the books are so they could learn, and they would have a desire to learn because they're near the books.
I'm saying that
boy, it was the joke on them.
They
didn't understand the pop culture changes of from the 1950s and the television era.
I'm saying that it's
and how
naive.
they stopped reading.
Yeah, I think that it's naive to think that it's like, oh well, as long as we create this system where there is there's a teacher, there's like libraries and whatever else, that we just need to make sure that kids are in school for a certain amount of time, and the longer that we put them in there, the better.
But they don't even give them the choice to read.
Right. Well,
have you seen what they don't even have books?
I think that's what some of them
just gay books.
I'm just saying, like, okay, you look at an elementary school and you go through I remember having textbooks when I was in elementary school. I remember the day where you check out your textbook. You had to make sure, inspect it, sign something for it, and it was yours for the year. And those were your books. Well, now they don't even have that. They have these worksheets already pre-printed, or they go home and they get the whatever emailed, and so they don't even have books, and they don't have reading time.
All the books,
they're
all
supposed
the
to do all of
textbooks.
that post school, right? After school, they have to read, and
all
it's
the
like
textbooks are digital, and so you can't even see when changes are made.
Yeah, and anyways,
Animal Farm.
To me, I feel like back to what you were saying about the books. That's what the Ivy League was created for. It was the best books, and some of these people that had the Ivy League schools, they had the knowledge in the books, and so the kids had to pay a lot of money to get that special knowledge of those superior books and superior information. Well, now we have it. it's on the it's on the internet. You can find all that information. You don't even need to go through those institutions anymore.
Right. But the institutions don't die that easily.
Well,
That's
because
the
they
thing.
have
They
this
want to exist
idea,
still.
they have this idea that humans have to, you have to be taught from the books that what a lot of people don't understand okay, so if you're not a homeschool person, and I wasn't homeschooled, I wasn't. I was public schooled, and I probably should have been homeschooled because I just don't think like everybody else, and I don't learn like everybody else. But I was probably one of the worst students ever. Like my GPA was really low.
I think that everybody else part is a kind of a fallacy, though. You know what I
Right.
mean?
You wanna have
you
that
probably
battle?
felt that way.
Well, no, what I mean was, I was behind. Like, you know, people, I was
But a
just,
lot of people were behind.
sure, maybe.
That's all I'm saying.
Like
Yeah.
it was before the No Child Left Behind initiative of George W.
Before
Bush.
it was Michelle left behind.
I was one of those that were kind of behind. But what ended up happening was, well, I just think that I came to the conclusion once I started reading that you teach yourself. Ultimately, your brain is built to explain it to yourself. People can explain it to you in a way that you understand, but it isn't until you internalize what they're saying and
Yeah.
make sense of it that you will understand the concept. So
What do you mean by internalize?
like it has to be it has to be processed in your own mind for the information to get where it needs to be.
Okay, but how would you describe to process it?
I would have to have a student interested, so I'd have to have their attention. I'd have to explain it to them, and then I'd have to, make sure that I explain it in a way like so that they comprehend what I'm saying. And then I don't know. What are you asking exactly? That's a very hard thing to describe.
What are you getting at?
Well, I mean, I know what you're saying, but how do you?
Because we say that a lot, and I've heard that, and I believe it too. I think you're right.
Yeah.
But it's like, but what is that?
It's
what
kind
is
of
that
a-
when you're internalizing
So,
or processing or whatever?
I always
what
think
are you
about
doing
it-
with your brain there? You know?
I don't know how it works in my brain. I don't know what it looks. That's like a very abstract thought. Like I don't know how it works, but I do know that when it comes to me learning, it's me in that book.
I think the only thing I can think of so far, and it seems like you have something to say too, Joe, but is you're taking its parts, like whatever the concept is, you're taking it apart and organizing it, and checking each part to see if it makes sense to you against something you already know.
Yeah, there you
for
go.
sure.
You did a better job.
And then you're
of
like
explaining.
putting it in folders in your head
Yep.
or
Yeah.
something.
I mean,
I
everything.
used the word process,
Yeah.
Right.
and
but
that
I
summed up
want it
everything that you just said.
I
But
want
yes.
that broken down.
Okay.
I think another word that you could use is contextualize. You're explaining a math concept to somebody. It's like, okay, imagine that you have the number 36, and then now you're going to subtract 6 from that. Now you're going to multiply it by 2 or whatever. You're kind of holding all
60.
You're holding all those numbers.
See how I did that? That was fast.
That was not
You
fast.
have an excellent processor.
So you have all those numbers kind of just floating there.
Uh-huh.
Let's say it's like in your cache, right? Or whatever, if you want to use
Mm-hmm.
a computer metaphor. But it's not moored to anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you were like, if your experience today was like, okay, I checked to see how much money I had in my pocket, and there's $36, and then I went to the store and I had to pay $6 for this or whatever. But then a fairy popped out and doubled my money or whatever. Now I have $60. Like, it would be a lot easier to just like always remember that. Like, no, I know exactly how much money I had and the changes that it went through today. But if I were to say at the end of the day, hey, Michelle, what was that math problem that I gave you? Like, I don't know. It's like maybe
Yeah.
there was a 3 in it or something like that. And so I think that's what it is. It's like you're making it more connected
Yeah.
to the things that already matter to you. You know,
You're giving it context.
you're
is what
giving it
saying.
context. The
But
other-
my point was, you don't need. I mean, teachers are good because they can explain it, but you don't always need a teacher. You are your own teacher, and I know that's kind of a revolutionary idea, but with the internet age, that's even more.
yeah.
We're taking out that middleman. I remember having a conversation with this man when we lived in Virginia who taught at Oxford, and he asked me about about my education. I said, "Well, I'm going to school online," and he's like, "Online?" He was an older gentleman, right? And he's like, "What's that like?" I'm like, it's nice. I can look up anything I want and I can read and I can learn anything I want. I go, my goal is eventually we may not even need people like you. And I was joking, and I think he knew I was joking, but my point was, what I loved about the internet is that it's taking away the middleman, that we can get that information and we don't have to filter it through other people. We can get it straight from the source. We can read the book straight from the author. We don't need to have somebody interpret it for us. That's the goal. And then that's how critical thinking is formed.
When I help some of my kids with math, there's been lots of times where I'm like, okay, now do this problem, or this is the next one in the practice, and they'll come up with the answer, and I'll maybe sometimes see them working it out or whatever, and then I'll be like, how did you figure that out? Because
you want them to tell you the process.
It's not just that I want them to tell me the process, but according to the tools that I know that they have, I'm curious how they got to the answer, because it will surprise me sometimes, like either how quickly they do it or the numbers that they're kind of saying beforehand. It's like, oh, okay, well, I added this and then I subtracted that or whatever. And a lot of times the books that we learn from, they kind of give an example. It's like, this is the method by which you do this, you know? And I always try to explain, like, well, that's one way of thinking about it. But there's other ways, like whatever makes sense to you, as long as you get to the same answer, then that's better. But it's good to know like all the different ways to do it, to see which one
works for you,
makes the most amount of sense. And I'm curious about their process because like I'm also just curious like different ways of doing it. I know that when you study for like the SATs or the GRE or whatever, there'll be these different methods of doing math faster, and I still use those methods. I've never took those tests, but I've studied for them, and it's like, oh, if you're doing percentages, do it like this. I'm like, oh, why didn't I learn this in school to do it this way? It's so fast.
You just made me think of that Nate Bargatze where he talks about Common Core. Have you seen that one?
Is this on the new one?
I don't know, but he's like, for those of you who don't know, have never experienced Common Core, imagine somebody coming to your house and knocking on your front door to deliver something, and you tell them to go around the back through your house and back to the front door, something like that. It was like all this unnecessary work for you to just get what you normally would do to begin with. We'll have to play that clip because it's super funny.
Yeah.
I'll send it to you.
Well, so overall, what's your thought on the 4-day, 4 school day
I'm
week?
always for, so my thought was, I want more. That's not enough for me. I want less days. I'm like,
why stop at 4?
Why stop at 4? Why not just 2 or 3? I was thinking, how cool would it be for a teacher if they didn't have to work full time? They could do a start of, a side business on the side, or they'd have time to do something other than teach.
Totally.
Like actually, if they're a math teacher, actually do mathematics or, build stuff, be an engineer. Then they could show their students what they've done. So if we lower nobody likes this because they all want they're a part of the system that's been created, and they want their full-time job with benefits and all that. So my ideas are really unconventional and probably
it's never
going to
work as long as the money is there no matter what. In other words, as long as the school system continues to be funded through taxes, this will never work. But it would be awesome if it went totally voluntary pay, right? Like where people pay because they want to, just like any other thing that we get in the economy. and then it would be totally at will, for like different families would send their kids to whatever classes they want, whatever amount that they want. I mean, and teachers could set up their stuff the way that they want.
I think that
would be awesome.
Even some sort of block grant or voucher or education account, whatever, like these different things could, I know that it's still stealing money from people.
I was just distracted because it sounded like you said voucher. Keep going.
That even those things, though it's still stealing money from people and making them pay it, use it for a certain purpose, which is not efficient, nor moral.
But stealing less is better.
Yeah, but let's say that they even stole the same amount, and they said you just need to spend this somehow on education. It would and then they deregulated what counted as a school or how many hours you needed to do or whatever, you could still potentially get all those outcomes or similar outcomes than what you were talking about, because you could have somebody being like, okay, I am a private tutor, I teach these levels of math, and then they just teach in hour blocks every day full time, right? They could do full time. Or even if you had like a school where it's like, I take a different class every day of the week of this many people, and I teach the same lesson every single day. And then the next week I do that again, but they're different groups.
They do need to change the incentive structure.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how in Washington State, they don't take attendance every day for the funding. They just take it on some random day, and then they average it out, and they're like, okay, this is how many students you have, and then this is how much money you get. And so as a result, there's not like truancy officers and stuff. They're not harassing you,
Yeah.
as public schoolers and stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's way better.
Yeah.
So much better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though it's still from stolen funds, but the structure of it is less bad. Here, I would say Texas has a nanny school state.
Well, I'll say this: if you take your kids out, they stay out of your business. They're not like other states where you're required to, show your credentials or have a test at the end of this year or whatever, because you have to do that in Virginia. I don't know if you knew that. They if you're out, you're out. But if you're in, you are in. And they want to know why your kid's not there, and it's annoying.
Do you want me to play this?
Yeah, this is so weird.
Okay.
Great.
Home, which homework's fun. First and second grade was awesome. Third grade, you're like, okay. They throw some stuff in, you're like, oh, all right. It's, okay. Learning it earlier than we used to, huh? I don't even know if that's true, but. She brought home Common Core math. That's fun. It's a new math they invented. No heads up, just give it to parents that never learned it. It's just a whole new, it's unbelievable. Why when they bring it home, you gotta watch a 40-minute YouTube video on Common Core math. I don't even understand it. If you know it, if you don't know Common Core, it's just a new math. And the goal of Common Core is to use one sheet of paper for every problem. You just want to keep breaking the problem down. You put the problem at the top, and it just keeps going. And then what's even funnier is you see old math in the middle of it. As you break it down, old math gets in there, and you're like, oh, just do that at the top. I don't even know what to do. And it's not like old math isn't working. Old math's doing, I don't get incorrect change everywhere just going, this stupid old math. It's a long way to get at the same answer. I told my wife, I go, it feels like if you knocked on my front door and I opened it, and you say, can I come in? And I was like, do you mind walking in and coming in through the back door? And you'd be like, does the front door not work? I'm like, no, it works. I use it. A lot of people still use it. But the new way is to go jump the fence and come in the back and meet me at this same spot.
That's it. So that's Common Core math, and it's stupid.
So we've talked about this before, where if it wasn't for 2020 and the way that the election went, and subsequently, and this is I think a salient point, that after 2020, I think most people were done with Trump. Even a lot of Republicans and Trump supporters are like, all right.
In 2020?
After 2020.
Oh.
After J6, after everything.
Maybe.
Because it was kind of like, all right, let's stop with the drama. Like, even if you agree with like all the stuff that he was for and that he was kind of railroaded during his administration, all this stuff, it's kind of like, all right, well, I'm tired of people just being at a fever pitch against Trump. So let's just move on to something else. What
It
else
was
do
a
we
win
got?
for the corporate media.
Right. But then he was getting all these indictments with these novel legal theories that they had never tried before. And he was being acquitted or never tried criminally for certain things. But then civilly, he was found liable, which is the same thing like with Alex Jones. It's like he was not criminally found to be anything. It's just in a civil court, you're liable. In the same way that O.J. Simpson was acquitted for murder, but in a civil court, he was found liable for murder, right? So, but it was over and over, and it was, these documents and rating of Mar-a-Lago. And a lot of people are like, all right, that's enough. I'm back on the Trump train. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And then immigration and inflation just really tipped it over for a lot of people.
And the woke cancel culture.
But now we're in this position after years of inflation, and it's kind of this crisis that is not going to waste. Whereas, like what you were saying with Divine and just the mindset of, well, why can't we do things differently
Yeah.
now? Why can't we get rid of an entire department
Mm-hmm.
in the government?
You know who really turned the tide in Argentina with Milei? Who the voting base was that changed it? Do you know, Michelle?
Mm-mm.
Millennials?
Yeah, it was the youth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gen Z probably, actually.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I think younger than millennials.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I think that they were. I mean, which is such a delightful surprise
Mhm.
because you'd think like with the state funded schooling there'd be no hope, no chance. But Malay was really smart, and he was working on his branding for a really long time, and
Yeah.
it got to him. It's great.
So here's my question
And
for
plus, they're the ones suffering the most under inflation.
you.
So they
Yeah,
have the greatest
exactly.
incentive.
Yeah, I mean, it's this whole thing. Like, you see everybody older than you is either in a house or they're buying a house or whatever.
Mhm.
And then you feel like, I'm never going to be able to buy a house.
Mhm.
I'm never going to be able to pay off my student loans.
Mhm.
I am never going to be able to enjoy the things that the generations before me. I'm not going to get Social Security. That's a joke, And so it's like, maybe try something different, And so here's my question for you.
Mhm.
What is something that you're excited about with the new Trump administration, and what's something that you're worried about for the next 4 years?
Okay. You want me to go first?
Sure. I didn't pre-ask these questions, so.
I know, so it's just like thinking off the cuff here. I guess for me, one of the most exciting things is kind of what we're talking about is the opportunity for change. I'm excited about the old financial system dying.
Mm.
The bankers that are sort of cartels now that have caused the inflation, in my opinion, with the debt, and their printing of money, which a lot of people don't know that that's actually the Federal Reserve that does that, not the U.S. government. U.S. government does it through the Federal Reserve. So I'm excited about the idea of cryptocurrency coming on the rise, and perhaps being the new reserve that we have, the global reserve currency, which I think would be fair for every country, not just ours, and it would help everybody rise out of the economic slump that we're in, and maybe get us out of this debt that we're in right now. So I'm excited about that, and the openness of people like Elon Musk and Trump, who's open-minded to the idea of that. So that's what I'm excited most about, is the new changes of that kind of stuff.
So you feel like there's great opportunity for financial reforms?
Yes.
Opening
like big,
up.
I find it interesting that about 100 years ago, they started financial reform, which was started on Jekyll Island, with the bankers coming together and creating the Federal Reserve. And now it's been over 100 years, and we've had problems, and now I think we're at another kind of pinnacle area of time where we can start a new financial, redo it, and so it's fair and not regulated by a government.
I don't think it's insignificant that Trump, on the biggest show that exists in the world, Joe Rogan, talked about not having an income tax. Now, he talked about replacing it with tariffs and all this stuff, but the fact that is in the conversation, and generally, if Trump talks about something, by definition, it's in the conversation. But the fact that he brought that up, that's something, Trump is amazing. One of his amazing things that he's able to do is he's kind of a boomer in so many ways, he
is a boomer.
His way
age-wise.
but his way of thinking about kind of just America and I don't know, a lot of his opinions, it's oh yeah, that's kind of in the water. It's what everybody kind of believes. But the fact that he can be I was thinking about this, and have you heard about this idea or whatever, and that he's willing to just, why don't we do that? Makes great business sense. And so it's just the fact that you could talk about maybe not have an income tax.
Yeah, in the past, if we talked about cryptocurrency, people go, you can't do that, and it would shut you down, and you couldn't even have a conversation.
Well, I'm okay, sorry, I keep on bringing this back to Javier in Argentina, but it's like Trump has been attacked far more, as far as I know, than Javier. I don't know that they've shot him or taken him to court for tons of things,
Right,
or
right.
just like
Yeah, neither
all
do I.
this libel, you know what I mean? Libel?
Libel.
Well,
You know,
because
on
it's
the- in the
Argentina,
news or
not the
anything.
U.S. He's, there's more at stake with Trump than it is there was, and maybe people.
But there is a lot at stake for the Argentine
True.
bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
The same
everything
amount,
at
yeah.
stake for them, you know.
Right.
So
But they're not up against a whole cabal,
that's true.
worldwide
Yeah.
cabal.
Yeah, but-
Although the cabal wouldn't want someone like Javier, who is a
Yeah.
self-proclaimed libertarian, to get into
Mhm.
that position and succeed.
True,
Because then it's
and
gonna.
I'm not downplaying it. I'm
Right,
just
right.
saying that there's more at stake with Trump, and that's why the assassination attempts,
Right.
and maybe there were assassination attempts that we just don't know about with Javier.
So
Or
what?
what's his name?
Yeah,
Javier Milei. yeah.
Milei.
So I'm excited to see and hopeful that it'll be like as amazing as it has seemed for Argentina, of them just getting rid of the ministry of this and that and all
Mhm.
these dumb,
Fuera.
nonsense things. Yeah, getting rid of all those to see if it's even more. You know what I mean?
Mhm. So that's
Trump
what you're
has
excited
all-
about.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's
having
that's
a-
what yours
a
is.
live
Well,
leaderboard
that's one of 'em.
of cuts. Yeah.
There's more.
because like so for example,
I know I have a ton of things, but that Joe asked what the
Yeah.
most.
Right.
Is this the one you're most excited
look,
about?
I'm going to tell you whatever I want to say right now. If
The
they-
Libertarian
so-
podcast. You-
Here's one with that, right? If he were to get rid of the Department of Education, like he is mentioned,
Mhm.
and then you have just all of your states, and they have their departments of education. But then we have a little bit of federalism in there finally again, where they need to compete
Right.
with each other.
Yep.
And there's at least some incentive for them to be better.
Yeah.
So that might, even though they're all, corrupt as well, the incentives might help a lot,
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was going to say is with the money, just like what you were talking about, if he opens up the pipeline
Oh
again.
yeah. Well, that's going to
and-
help the economy quick.
Right. And then the thing that I do, and I know that like libertarians hate the tariffs, but if he did get rid of the income tax and then brought the tariffs instead for now, while we're getting rid of all of the bureaucracies, right? And then like lowering the costs of stuff, then at least the cost of things would be more distributed evenly. So like all the immigrants, you know what I mean, who aren't paying taxes and stuff like that, but we are. Like, I don't want anyone to pay taxes. It's not that I want them to, but it would at least be more fair.
Well, we talked about this once before. There's no benefit to being an American citizen anymore.
There's detriments
There's detriments. Like
Yeah.
it's almost better to be a migrant.
in certain ways. I'm sure.
I
don't know.
mean,
I
there
haven't
won't
really
be
thought
as soon
about
as
it very
Trump's
much,
president,
yeah.
but at the time they were getting more. I mean, they were given their free health care. They're getting handed
Free
credit.
apartments
Yes,
in New York.
housing, all of it.
Yeah.
And then we're busting our butt to survive here in our,
I really like what you're saying about how that's like a step in the direction of federalism. And I've wondered if, because not everybody has the same reasons for hating certain policy changes and whatnot or liking them. And I've wondered if with the abortion topic, if there's a cohort of people that it's not the fact that they want more abortion that bothered them. I'm talking about bureaucrats. It's the fact that it opened up the conversation of like, listen, we don't need to do this the same way for everybody. We could hand it back to the states.
100%. I think that that's what they hate. I
Yeah.
think they hate federalism
Yeah.
specifically because they hate that the way that's not the way they want. It can even be demonstrated
Yeah.
because then people can see some good results potentially with
Right.
this other way, and then they lose control entirely.
Their vision is that the United States be culturally different in all the states, or potentially, the different regions are known for different stuff, but that they run exactly the same. Same set of laws, same election, just one big blob of democracy.
I don't even know about the cultural part anymore.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
think maybe like 15 years ago.
I guess I just meant like
You know?
food. You know what I mean? It's like the maps that you see like on Facebook where it's like, what's the number one recipe search and all the different 50 states,
Right.
that sort of
but
thing.
then all the ingredients are supposed to be like bugs and stuff.
Right, exactly. My number one, no, so I'm gonna kind of narrow it really tightly, is that one of the things that I'm excited about is this idea if Thomas Massey, is in the Department of Agriculture, and that because he has a kind of a list of changes that he has wanted to make for a long time, and some of them are bipartisan, but it's just the ability for farmers to sell their meat to markets
Without the
without
USDA?
yeah without sending them to large distributors.
Yeah.
There's like 4 in the country or
Mhm.
whatever,
Can
and
you
they,
imagine if people started to, like, if you actually could see the results with your own eyes of the general populace becoming as healthy as they were when we were kids?
that'd be totally nuts.
Totally.
I don't
Yeah.
even know if we were that healthy.
Well, but when you look at
I
old
think that we
pictures,
were.
if you look at pictures of old beaches and stuff like that, and
Okay,
it's
maybe
like
it was a little bit before our time.
I was
Yeah,
going to
maybe a
say
little bit
maybe
before the
1960s and 70s.
Yeah.
80s was the 80s was the result of all the processed foods already starting to happen.
But it wasn't as much.
yeah.
It was
Yeah,
still a little. It was
obviously,
still better
because
then than now.
they didn't have all the fast food places.
Anyway.
I remember Sizzler
Well,
being the
and
big restaurant.
plus it was. I know, I remember that too. But it also was that it wasn't entrenched in the parents of the time yet. So it was like they were catching all those kids, but the parents weren't to the point where they're giving them a bag of garbage after every soccer game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. The sugar intake was not nearly as much. What I saw in the early 2000s was an increase of fast food being eaten for every meal.
Do you know what our oldest son just said today to me? Because we stopped by Dairy Queen to get him a burger after Frisbee. And he said something like, "This is the thing that I would be the most excited about living in the future." Like thinking if he had been born in the past, is that there's fast food. 'Cause he loves it so much.
He
I
loves
mean, because
fast
he
food.
has it rarely, you know.
Yeah.
It's a treat.
It's so yummy.
That's what
Yeah.
it used to be, a treat when I was a kid.
Right.
right.
Now
Well,
it's
it's called
like-
hyper palatable food. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, what were you back to what you were saying?
Oh yeah, so just that one change, and obviously if some of the things that RFK is, I know that's like really triggering or whatever, is highly controversial, right? But just those changes with food freedom and maybe just a little bit more honesty back
Yeah.
in what we have.
Why are you saying it's triggering? You mean because of regulating healthiness?
People are just used to vaccines and
Just
the
that
CDC.
just that he's seen as a conspiracy theorist and
Okay.
that sort of thing, and I think that there's some things where it's like, and this is what he says too, is like oh, but experts have said this, and he's like, listen, we have fought many court battles about many topics, and over the years we go to court with our experts and they go to court with their experts. There's experts on both sides.
That's
And they
right.
could argue these things. So I think that he does have like a streak of like, wait, but what's true? And then
Yeah.
like trying to push for that. And he's obviously convinced of certain things, and he's strongly convinced. And you don't do the things that he's doing where it's like it's putting his life in jeopardy, I feel.
Well, he's lost
Yeah.
family members over
And
this.
yeah,
It's a
family
pretty
members and
big
all this stuff.
risk.
Like to be a Kennedy and then to be like kind of exiled
Yeah,
from
he's been
royalty. You know what I mean? It's there's got to be more to it. But I
Yeah.
think that just kind of having the like broaching these topics and being like, well, what if we did? You know, there's the idea of like getting fluoride out of water. I don't know anything this way or the other. You know, I know what people say and all this stuff. But just the fact that it's like that's on the table.
Yeah.
You know, I like that.
I do too.
One
I like
thing
it a lot.
that I'm apprehensive about with the new administration is whether or not foreign policy is really going to change. You know, and
Even with Tulsi?
I think that Tulsi Gabbard and who's the guy, Kash Patel and Hag Seth, right?
Yeah, or Hagen, or is he the Department of Defense guy?
I think it was the border guy that I was thinking of.
I was thinking, okay.
Anyway, just that
forget his name.
I think that like I'm worried that the people that You know, it's like
The hawks.
I'm worried, yeah, that the same thing is going to happen last time
That
where
will keep
Trump
the-
was like, hey, maybe we shouldn't be eternal enemies with Russia. And then it's like, you're a Russian asset. And then we're going
Well,
to
I don't
spend
think
3
that's gonna happen with
years
Tulsi though.
I think people have
because
learned.
they already do that.
Well,
And she's getting
I
in.
think Kash Patel was involved in the whole like kind of disproving the whole him and Devin
Russiagate.
Nunes, the Russiagate. So he knows,
Right.
and we're on to them now. We know how they work, and I don't
Yeah.
think that. And now they've lost the media.
Yeah.
Like the media is dead after this election. Just like you mentioned, Trump used Joe Rogan, and the podcast killed the cable television. You know that song. The radio killed the video killed the radio star. Or the podcast killed the cable news, in my opinion, in this
Yeah.
last election. And I just don't think that they have the power and control that they used to have. So that's exciting to me. But
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
I think that we have a lot to look forward to and a lot of hope for kind of domestic policy.
and foreign policy.
But I think that the foreign policy, I'm worried that they're gonna. I think there's too much at stake, you know.
Well,
like for the interests.
I'm going to push
and
back
they have
on.
all the guns.
I'm going to push back on this a little bit because look at what's happening in Canada. I think what happened in America, the whole world has been waiting and watching us, and it's already been going conservative, like in Europe. I mean, we've been
Populist.
watching. It's a populist movement that's been global, and I know the globalists aren't going to go away quietly. They're going to keep fighting. But they're having less and less power. We won a big battle in November. And so, I mean, if you've been following Europe, the farmers' uprising in the last year or so
Is it working?
is what working.
The farmers' uprising.
Oh, well, yeah. Because
Right.
now they're like winning elections. You know, they just
great.
won one in, was it France? Wasn't it France? Or am I wrong?
I don't know.
Anyway, they're winning elections. Look at what's happening with Trudeau in Canada.
I don't pay attention to crap old countries.
Well, you should, because I think if you saw what was going on across the world, you'd have more hope.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Because
that's good.
people
That's a
are
good point.
not buying it anymore. And so I think
Although
we're
I
on the
did
same
hear
page.
something the other day. There was a guy that was, this is on, I think that same Tom Woods podcast, but he was asking him about free speech. A guy from the UK.
Oh, yeah, the
He's
UK.
like, so how is it really over there? And, you know, he was saying he does speak carefully because he's like a comedian and a writer and whatever. So he's careful about what he says. But he was saying, I mean, because they don't have a First Amendment, there are really crazy things that happen. And one example that he gave is that there was like somebody out front of some, I don't know where they were. I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe it was an abortion clinic or something. I think that's what it was. And then, and a cop came up and asked if this person was praying in their mind. And they were like, maybe, maybe not. And then they arrested him because they
he
might have
didn't say
been
no.
thinking a prayer. Thought crime, literal.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So there's crazy stuff like that
Whoa.
regularly. I don't know that it's that likely to
Wasn't
happen
Orwell
to you.
British?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not that
Oh, my
likely, but the
gosh.
fact that it can happen is already going to put a chill. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's going to, and it's just still, people are going
Well-
to protect themselves by not saying stuff that they think, which
I
is not
just
good.
want to remind you that we weren't too far from them 4 years ago. So, I mean, we've gone through the censorship, we've gone through all of that, and we made it out the other end. And so this is going to be a contagious movement that's going to go across the world. So I'm pretty optimistic on that. What I'm afraid of is the small community groups that have been created by the Soros Foundation to disrupt and cause problems. I'm worried about violence. And we're already seeing a little bit of that with this weird New Orleans thing. And I don't know what else is going to happen between now and the inauguration, but I'm concerned about violence from the left.
Or just all 4 years, since they did crazy stuff all 4 years last
Oh, that's
time.
true. I forgot about
Hey,
that.
I don't know if we've
Another
talked about
virus,
this.
maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Pandemic,
well, I think
too?
Riots.
isn't the NIH working on an avian flu that would actually kill lots and lots of people, regardless of their age and health?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
Did you heard that? Okay.
Well, is it all sunshine and roses for you, Emily, or are you apprehensive about anything for the next administration?
Well, I'm sure that crazy stuff will happen, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm still excited, even though,
Yeah.
I mean, I hope they don't kill us. I hope they don't get Russia to bomb us.
Yeah.
There's things,
Right.
but I'm still I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that we have a lot to look forward to.
Well, let's talk more this time. That's our New Year's resolution.
Right. Do we want to say any goals for the podcast, or did we just leave people on the edge of their seats?
I think we should just leave people on the edge of their seats.
All right.
I doubt they're that much on the edge of their seats. I think they're fine.
We brought this back because obviously we like doing it, but
Popular demand.
popular demand. We talked
I've been
to
getting a lot of requests.
And give
tens
the people
of
what
people.
they want.
Sometimes I feel, I don't know.
I don't know why they want it, but here we are.
Yeah, but we've heard some people say. But what I'm asking is if people could write in, email us, or text us if you know us. Tell us what you like about the show, what you want to hear more of, and what things that you are like, let's get through this so that we can get to the interesting part. And because we want to make it better.
atlasanthemjem @gmail.com.
All right, write in. Tell us what
Yeah.
you like. Tell us what you want to hear about.
Okay. Till next time.
All right.